All right, let's just start. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our SIG meeting. Our agenda today is an update on items for 111, particularly priority and preemption to beta is on track. So far, equivalence cache, I believe, is on track. Jonathan should know better, and Harry if he's in the meeting. But I believe they are on track. So we basically have to wait and see how our tests will be in the next week or so. We have seen some issues with equivalence cache in the past, so hopefully this time they will be fine. So we will know soon whether we can move it to beta in 111 or not. So, and gang scheduling, this is not something that's going to be available, I guess, in 111, but that one is going forward as well. So let's see. These are pretty much taints and toleration. So we will have to arrange that with class next week probably, about taints and tolerations, but we will know about that too. Jonathan, do you have an update for any, or what's your item on the agenda? I didn't.
It was a sort of question for the SIG.
Okay.
Not a work update.
Okay. Do you want to talk about it now?
Yeah, I'm having trouble connecting from this computer. Sorry. So I guess as I've been learning the scheduler code base, the question on my mind has been, what is the Go API of the scheduler? Because we have a lot of exported symbols that don't seem like they need to be exported, and so I was wondering if the SIG in general had a maybe clearer picture of what we expect people outside of package/scheduling to import, and then we can work towards unexporting and moving things around to make that a smaller API surface.
Yeah, so unfortunately we don't have any very clear guidelines about what can be used from scheduler and what cannot. There are some components, particularly autoscaler and daemon set controller, that use some of the scheduler API. And I guess it has been kind of ad hoc, or basically based on the needs of other components that we have exposed certain libraries. Mm-hmm. I guess the only way we can know today is to look where they are used in the code base. This is not great because there might be other people who have used publicly available API in their custom codes or controllers. But if you think there are certain things that are currently public and shouldn't be, and you don't find any usage for those components or those API, you can possibly think about removing them. And we can communicate and send emails, let everybody know that we are going to remove them from the publicly available API.
Yeah.
Where I can see we can go forward with that. Ravi, do you have any?
Yeah, so the other thing that we need to be careful about is some external components which are not in the code base, maybe using those.
Yeah, that's what
like
I said.
Scheduler and
and
the autoscaler as well.
Right, so actually the scheduler uses a scheduler API as well, and that's in actually Cube Arbitrator probably does as well. These are in incubator repos, and they are not in the main code base. But anyway,
that's true. I'm not looking to break anyone. I just maybe it'd be nice not to formalize what's already in use. Maybe, I don't know. I'll put some thought into it, and we can maybe talk more about it on the mailing list.
Yeah, this has been a little unfortunate that we didn't have any clear guidelines or explicit information about what is available outside and what we are going to keep and what's not. And actually, we haven't been super careful about keeping our library backward compatible.
Are there components of this that are specific to scheduling, or is this more of just something that as like would be an example, or just trying to own our own, part of the code base or something?
So
I mean, the thing I've been looking at recently is equivalence cache, which is used by the generic scheduler, which is an implementation of the schedule algorithm interface. And so, like, equivalence cache specifically, I think doesn't make sense to be used anywhere else, and is currently an exported symbol. I haven't looked thoroughly. I don't think anyone's using it. And so it just made me think, like, what's in use and what isn't in use outside of package/scheduling, and maybe we can work to clean that up.
right. Yeah, in particular about equivalence cache, I am fairly confident that it's not used outside, but it's not a 100% assurance. I think it's not used because it has been in alpha and we have changed it quite a bit. Probably we've already broken other people if they have used it. So it should be generally okay.
So I have started like breaking down the scheduler code so that the entire package scheduler code could be in a separate repo. But I mean, I've been doing it in my spare time. I could not put much of time into it, so that this could be used for individual plugins as well.
Right. Yeah, that would be useful.
Yeah. So when we are doing that, probably I can take help from Jonathan as well once he finds out those dependent symbols.
Yeah, sounds good.
Is that something that's like one massive effort, or something that we can do in small steps?
We can do it in small steps too. Like we can first of all break the package scheduler into a separate repo, and then individual plugins could be in separate repo too. Like we can find out which one is the better choice, at least at this point of time.
Yeah, we're gonna create another repo for scheduling framework as well. So I don't know if we want to. Yeah, well, we can have two. I don't know.
No, I mean, like we can wait till that happens to, like for the framework.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with it. I've been doing it just in my spare time to find out if there is dependency.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, my other question would be, how do you ensure this doesn't just continue to happen, or like, is it even worth it if it's just going to completely be undone? The next group of whatever features need to go in, or etc.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, maybe we should define what is usable and what is not usable outside of Kubernetes scheduler. So far as I can tell, it has been mostly our predicate library that has been used outside of Kubernetes scheduler, but we have never defined this very well, that what is available and what is not available. Basically, we don't have any sort of like library that we support.
No, I think this is more a question of maybe code review, and the people who are on the approvers and reviewers list for this SIG should maybe be keeping in mind when reviewing code. Is this something? Does this need to start with a capital letter?
Yeah.
Just in terms of the Go exporting symbols, or not. And if we think this is worthwhile, we can put together a guideline. Maybe it makes sense to do this for scheduling and then show it to the other SIGs and say, we're trying to reduce our surface area, or at least prevent it from growing.
And that would be actually very useful if you have the time to do that. Or maybe Rabia is also interested in helping you with that. If you guys can put together something like that, it would be very, very useful.
Yeah, we can definitely look into it.
Okay.
Sure, I can help that out.
Okay.
I am a little confused about how, if it's not just like capital letter or starting word, capitalized words, exports, what hackery people or things are going on. But since I assume this is mostly Go, perhaps though, like, are there particular scheduling expertise that could be brought to the problem? Is that silly? I don't know.
No, it's a valid question. Nothing about this seems like a scheduling problem to me. It's more just like a generic Go project question.
Right.
I'm new to the scheduler, and I'm new to the Go language, so I'm looking at things and asking, why are they this way?
Yeah.
If there's agreement that there's a better way, then I'm willing to push towards that.
So but generally we should actually export some of the like coarser grain functionalities of scheduler and keep some of the finer grain details internal to the scheduler. For example, we cannot always guarantee that equivalence cache remains, the implementation remains the way it is today, and the libraries remain the same as they are today. We may change the functions, we may change the arguments to the functions, and a lot of those changes, and we may end up breaking other components if they use them. If you want to use something like if this pod is schedulable on this node or not, we can probably provide a library that can tell you that, and we can provide some sort of guarantees that in the longer term we will support that interface. All right. Does it make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about it like a library that would help you with whether something is schedulable. Sounds like you're going to start just having like general topology libraries and other categories in Go, which is interesting to me, but probably I'm just really tired.
Okay. But anyway, so this is just something that we are all thinking about and thinking loud in this session. So it's not finalized, of course. So if you have other ideas, or if you come up with other ideas later, please share them with us.
Yeah, one thing, although I'm sorry, like I missed the initial part, like what was the right exact context, but regarding exporting, I would say, because based on my experience with cluster capacity, I think at least two important things that we would want to export always. I mean, what one is related to cluster capacity, but other part is in general. Like first of all, like how if someone wants to create an instance of a scheduler outside of the default scheduler, how to do that? So basically, exporting that part. For example, just create a scheduler, and we just have this similar instance of that default scheduler.
I completely agree with that.
Because previously because of so much refactor, like I have seen it was really pain to rebase cluster capacity because of that. And in fact, this thing might be helpful in like in other scenarios also, where someone wants to create a different scheduler but still wants to make it based on default scheduler.
Yep.
Yep, I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, all of us, I guess, I agree. And actually, one of the things that I was thinking about when I was thinking about like the scheduling framework was exactly like that. I was thinking that we should probably have a library that a lot of plugins can use, and maybe other components which are outside of the scheduler, for example, custom schedulers can use as well. So we definitely need to have something like an SDK for a scheduler.
Yeah, and I think regarding whether knowing whether a pod could be scheduled or not, yeah, I think for that I would say like exporting predicate and priorities in some way, so that like we can pick them selectively, and then based on them whatever tool is using those based on I mean all the predicated priorities are exported, and let's say we have some outside tool, then can pick those predicates and priorities selectively, and can decide in what's selective predicates and priorities that pod could be scheduled or not.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So what I said was just a vague example of what we can export and what we cannot. This is, of course, not something that is finalized, and we should definitely stick with this. But this was just an example of what can be, for example, as you said, be exported. And some of the, as I said earlier, coarser grain functionalities of the scheduler should probably be exported, and we should keep supporting those, if it makes sense.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Is there any other question, comments about scheduling library? Okay. So I actually didn't look at my emails. Let me just quickly see if there is any other item on the agenda. So we also would like to remind everybody that we are going to KubeCon next week. So next week and the week after, we are not going to have any SIG scheduling meetings. And we are going to resume on, I guess, May 17th or something like that, May 15th maybe. Let me see. So May 17th. Right, we are going to resume our SIG meetings on May 17th. If you're going to KubeCon, we will be very happy to see you. Jonathan and I are going to give a talk on SIG scheduling deep dive. I don't know how useful it'll be for you guys who are already familiar with the scheduler, but you're more than welcome to attend.
I don't think it's a deep dive.
Yeah, it's not deep dive. We were thinking about what to present. There's some SIGs use it as a sort of like face-to-face meeting, but we decided to actually make it a little bit more useful for a broader audience that may attend KubeCon. So we decided to give an introduction about the scheduler and some of the more advanced scheduler features. That's about it. These are all the things that I wanted to talk about. So is there any other question, comments, about anything in the scheduling world?
So Bobby, I have one with respect to priorities and preemption. So there is a task tracker that you have created, and I remember that you wanted to work on the performance related things.
Right.
So do you have a PR or somewhere you are tracking that, so that if there is something we could help with, we would be
so on performance. So actually, one of the things that I did recently, which improved performance of affinity and anti-affinity, was an effort that started with like basically profiling scheduler in presence of preemption. So far, my understanding or my investigations show that yes, of course, schedular performance drops or throughput drops in presence of preemption, but that's inevitable. I mean, scheduler starts looking at all the, when a pod is not schedulable, it starts looking at all the nodes again, starts removing and adding pods and figuring out what is the minimum set of victims that it can choose on different nodes, basically on all the nodes of the cluster. So of course, it's a relatively heavy operation, and it's expected that performance is not going to be as on par with like a scheduler that doesn't do preemption. But other than that, I haven't seen any other major area that we can improve performance of a scheduler. But you're certainly welcome to try and see if you find any areas that we can make improvements. There's no particular PR other than a couple of PRs that I sent to change affinity and anti-affinity performance. Other than that, I don't have any PRs.
Do we have more advanced like cost functions to actually be able to find or figure out what maybe would be the right balance between more computationally expensive scheduling and the resources or whatever saved by that?
We don't, no. So when it comes to scheduling or scheduling high priority pods, we oftentimes do not want to sacrifice the schedulability of high priority workloads to performance. So even if it takes some time to find victims and to schedule a high priority pod, we are willing to take that time and schedule the high priority pod. That's why we don't really care if it takes.
Yeah, so like to add to that, Bobby, I have like a follow-up question. So the SIG scalability defines a throughput for individual components. So should we update a document saying that the throughput would be hit in case there is a preemption happening in that?
Yeah, so I'm not so sure if the throughput there is expected to be hit much. The reason is that most of those scalability tests, as far as I understand, try to schedule pods in a cluster that has capacity, right? So as long as the cluster has capacity, preemption should not slow us down much.
You mean in the tests, we don't have a test which actually checks if the cluster is full and then does a preemption?
Well, in our tests, we definitely do.
Okay.
But in their scalability tests, their scalability measurements, as far as I know, the way it works is that they create a large cluster, then start creating a large number of pods, and then measure throughput. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not very confident about all their tests, but that's my understanding about how they test throughput of scheduler.
Okay, I think if I remember correctly, they're using scheduler perf, and as you told, they are going to create like big size cluster, like 30K nodes or 10K nodes or something like that, and then the assumption is all the pods would fit in the cluster.
Right.
So if there is a need, we can try adding like so in the first step, it's going to schedule all the pods that are there within the cluster, and then we are going to create few more pods and then check if the throughput is hit or something like that.
Yeah, so yes, and then we need to, if we want to measure throughput of preemption, we need to actually be a little bit more fundamental, basically, compared to the way that they are testing it. Maybe we can create this cluster with like low priority pods. Today, they don't put priority on any pods. So preemption is kind of not in the picture at all. So maybe we can add new tests to their scalability set, and then create a cluster, put a bunch of low priority pods so that the cluster is full, then create a number of higher priority pods and measure the throughput after the scheduler actually starts doing the preemption. One thing to consider here is that we must make sure that those pods that are created in the first step, basically low priority pods, set their graceful termination period to 0. Otherwise, the scheduler throughput drops, not necessarily because of preemption logic. It's because that those pods are not going to clear for a long time after they are preempted. So we need to think about all these when we create the test.
I'm actually unclear on that last bit. Is that that almost more sounds like a bug than a actual problem with the test?
So pods in Kubernetes can have graceful termination period.
Sure.
When they are preempted, they
anyway.
Yeah, they can stay, right?
Yeah.
And if they set the graceful termination period, Kubernetes respect that. So we need to make sure that they don't set, when we are testing scalability or throughput of a scheduler, we must make sure that they don't set graceful termination period. Otherwise, the scheduler will not be able to schedule the higher priority pods for a long time after, for example, 30 seconds, which is the default graceful termination period if they don't specify anything. So scheduler throughput is going to drop by like 30 seconds, and that 30 seconds will be so long that it will probably affect all the overhead in our logic.
It's an externality to the scheduler, you're saying, in terms of our testing.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
So my question is like now Ravi already has PR to move priority and preemption from alpha to beta. So is this still on track for 1.11?
Yes, that's we are hoping.
So moving from alpha to beta, even after we have out of feature freeze, right? We can still do that, right? In 1.11, is that the case?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. For moving this feature to, I don't think that this is not a new feature. We're just trying to move the version.
Yeah, the feature freeze is only for new features that are coming.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, then it's fine.
So,
And I don't know whether we have talked about scheduling policy or not. I mean, I saw the last update and it looked much better than the previous. But I haven't seen much feedback from at least people from NCD scheduling. So I'm not sure. Like, if you guys are going to discuss that in KubeCon also during KubeCon meetings.
We can
Yes,
certainly. We can
We
certainly.
would really love some feedback, some more feedback. I've been super busy. I think I'm definitely like listening as well. So please give feedback on it. It's a hard problem.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I saw that there is an update, but I didn't have the time to go and look at the new changes. But I will certainly take a look. It's not gonna be something targeted for 1.11 though. So our plan is to move it to alpha basically, or have the alpha version in 1.12.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's not going to block priority and preemption.
And like we have 1. I mean, yeah, that's fine if we have the alpha in 1.12. But what about the some admission plugin implementation that is going to be based on that scheduling policy? Are we still planning that for 1.12, or it's just a scheduling policy we are planning for 1.12?
By admission controller, you mean admission controller that enforce those policies?
Yeah, exactly.
So when I don't know how we can have those if the policies are not fully finalized. I don't think we can have them in 1.11.
No. Yeah, I'm saying in 1.12, once we have that alpha version of scheduling policy.
Yeah. In 1.12, sure. Yeah.
I'm saying like if we are planning in 1.12 for a scheduling policy to be alpha, I'm saying at the same time we should also plan at least to have a plugin that might be alpha or whatever based on that scheduling policy.
Yeah.
Yes,
absolutely.
I definitely assumed that saying something's alpha isn't just having something defined, but it's also having the controller or admission.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
we expect to see some real working version of the code. It may not be as stable, but it's real and it's implemented.
And one more thing I would like to point out, because previously we have had admission plugins that are based on scheduling features like node selectors and tails and tolerations, and we have had different plugins like one for node selector, one for tails and tolerations. But so now are we planning to have just one admission plugin that targets the whole scheduling policy, or are we still okay to have separate plugins that targets maybe specific feature of that scheduling policy or specific feature of a scheduler?
That's a good question, but I guess it's a little early to answer that question. I let the people who are more involved.
I'm saying it would be good to keep that in mind. I mean, I'm not saying we need to decide that right now, but going forward.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, these people who are trying to implement this and they're designing it, hopefully will think about the ways that they are going to separate these pieces as well. And I don't see any major issue with having one single admission controller, but maybe they decide to do it otherwise if it makes sense. I haven't really thought carefully about all the details.
I mean, for one, you can't necessarily stop people from adding admission controllers. I guess officially you can stop like having it like in the actual code base, but you can't stop people from putting the layers wherever else.
Yeah, I'm not talking about something outside like it could be, I mean, whatever way they can do, but I'm saying inside the cube code base.
Okay, yeah, I think that the question is sort of then how flat do you make policies, and do you expect that decomposition and the complexity sort of has a way that you can plug in like layers, or is that expected to be a tooling outside of Kubernetes? And I actually don't have an answer for that, but I would love opinions. Because I've been thinking about it a lot.
Yeah, I guess we can answer that question soon, but it's a little early now. All right, so our time is up. Is there any other immediate comments, short comment, questions?
Actually, I just have very like there is one PR from Stephen Szymanski that I have already reviewed and it's just stuck. I mean, if you guys can really, it seems that is really stuck. I think he wanted to have that 1.11. I don't know whether now he can have that or not.
Could you please? Yeah, could you? You know, I get too many PRs to review, so could you please send it to me on Slack or somewhere?
Yeah, sure.
I will take it.
I mean, I have mostly reviewed, so I mean, it looks good. So I mean, it should be easy for you to.
Sounds great. Okay, please send it to me. I will take a look.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and see you in almost 3 weeks.
Or at KubeCon.
All right, KubeCon. Yes. All right. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.